1:02 in the afternoon. We're going to do the Napa Valley Transportation Taxing Agency agenda first. And to that extent, I will ask everyone to rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. Very good. Madam Secretary, can we have a roll call, please?
Scott Sedgley.
Here.
Amber Manfrey.
Here.
Mark Joseph. Pierre Washington. Pam Reeves. Belia Ramos.
Here.
Eric Knight.
Here.
Paul Doring.
Here.
Michelle Deasy. Donald Williams. Kevin Eisenberg.
Here.
And we do have a confirmed absence today from member Narvaez. We do have a quorum.
All right, thank you. There's a real mild echo on the PA system. If we have any IT types who can look into that. Nonetheless, first up is adoption of the agenda for the tax agency. Any changes? I'll entertain a motion to approve the agenda as provided.
So moved. Doring.
Doring moved. Washington seconded. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Perfect. Public comment on the tax agency. Do we have any public comment here in the room or on the internet? No one wants to talk. All right. Hearing none, I will move on to chairperson and board members updates. I will save my limited comments for the formal board meeting. Any other board member comments? Any executive director update?
Not for the TA, thank you.
Fair enough. All right, that gets us to our presentations. We're going to get to have a project overview from the City of American Canyon on Measure T projects. And our public work, absolutely. And we are lucky and fortunate to have the American Canyon Public Works Director make that presentation. Welcome.
It's all right. Is it on now?
Testing, testing.
Okay. Well, if you hear screeching feedback, roll with it. Go ahead.
Good afternoon, Chair and Board. Erica Almond-Spithies, Public Works Director for the City of American Canyon, here to present with you our what we've completed this past year and our Measure T project list for road construction and rehabilitation. While we wait for the PowerPoint to come up. I do want to give a little bragging rights. We did receive word, and it'll be shown on the PowerPoint, some of the photos and visuals of the project, but one of our largest city projects to date, over a little over $8 million, Rancho Del Mar, received an honorable mention for efficient and sustainable road maintenance projects this year. It'll be announced next week at the League of California Cities Public Works Officers Institute. It's already out though, but just kind of some bragging rights for the City of American Canyon. 2 years in a row, we've got notable honorable mentions for our sustainable projects and complete streets. Here we go. All right, Measure U project overview. Just give you a quick outline of our projected revenues for the next 5 years, what we utilize for 2025 and our 5-year expenditure plan. The photos we're showing with Rancho Del Mar. Here's more photos of our Rio Del Mar and our side streets. Our projected revenues this past year was 1.9 million. And then of course, thanks to the voters, Measure U will get an increase the next 4 years, a little over 2 million a year if gas tax sales, countywide sales tax continue to rise. And our annual maintenance efforts, 370,000 at this point. This past year, we focused on Knightsbridge Way, Rancho Del Mar paving, and Melvin Road sidewalks for our treatments. We had over 2.29 miles of road reconstruction, a little over half a mile in sidewalk extensions, and then we upgraded 43 curb ramps. Here's an overview of our Knightsbridge rehabilitation and water main improvements. Our council supported infrastructure projects with our ARPA funds for our American Recovery Act funds in 2023. So we put that to good use of restoring some of our older subdivision neighborhoods, and Knightsbridge was one of them where we've had a lot of water main breaks over the years. And the overall project was 2.7 million, and we were able to reconstruct this whole area of the subdivision improvements. Next page, please. You'll see some of the before and after during construction projects, and then we'll get some very close-ups of some of the courts and what deteriorated shape they were in. Yeah, very bad. I mean, we had a brand new park at the end of that court. I'm not sure if that's Linwood. No, it's not Linwood Court, but just showing the before and afters is it's amazing to rejuvenate an older subdivision in the city. And then our next one was Rancho Del Mar paving and utility improvements. This included water and sewer utility upgrades. We literally were thankful we got some of the work done as they were taking some of the old water service lines. They were literally falling apart as we were breaking up the street, so it was time. And of course, our roadway tax funding is not being utilized for our enterprise. We were offsetting our local ratepayers and using the American Recovery Act funding to offset that fund, as well as the Measure U for the actual paving resurfacing of those projects. And this is the oldest subdivision in the city of American Canyon that council prioritized with the ARPA funding. Came in over a little over $8 million to complete this entire project. And we're working on our Rancho Phase 2 to complete the other portions of this subdivision improvements. Of course, we do a lot in 1 year. Everyone wants to know why their street's not being done today. So. And then this is overview before and afters of Rio Del Mar and some of the side streets. It's amazing difference, multimodal. This is the one that got the honorable mention, League of California Cities. As far as sustainable, we did FDR, which is full depth recycling in place, reconstruction in place. We're using the existing street section and pavement sections to revitalize and strengthen our major collectors in the city to get across town. Here's another overview of the Los Altos and Caser intersections. We're really into showing the before and afters in our aerials, just part of our projects now within the city. And then another ARPA project was our Melvin Road sidewalk and drainage improvements. This is one of also our safe routes to school areas where there was just no sidewalks. There's bits and portions, so it was a major sidewalk gap closure project, as well as adding much needed storm drainage with our remaining Measure A funds. And what we did notice in all these projects this past couple of years is that utilities, pipes have gone up significantly in price from 2022, 2023. So I think many of our cost overruns were from utilities and actually not the pavement. Pavement costs have really stayed consistent, I would say, over the past 20 years based on the price per ton of asphalt. So we've been very fortunate in that matter. And here's just another overview of the Melvin sidewalk. You know, this is just an after photo showing that there's actually consistent sidewalk on both sides of the street now. We have affordable housing in this neighborhood, and we're actually embarking on our next rehab of this street section. We were awarded funding because of our affordable housing, meeting our margins, MTC or surpassing them. We got 1.3 million towards paving the street in the next 2 years. Here are more projects, construction. So Green Island Road's under construction. If you haven't been out in our industrial area, it's under construction. It's 2.9 miles of streets being rejuvenated. East American Canyon Road guardrail also be under construction, advertising soon as the Class 1 trail on Green Island Road. And then in design is Rancho Del Mar, citywide pavement rejuvenation, South Kelly Road, Melvin pavement rehabilitation, and Teresa Avenue is pending. The South Kelly Road is including the county components. We own the south side of South Kelly and the county owns the north side of Kelly. And they've also requested to design and construct the Tower Road. So that's been agreement with the county and partnering on it with them. And we're going out to bid, I believe, next month on that project. So very exciting to get more done. And this is just a map of the next 5 years for the city. We just recently updated our list that will be brought forward to the board or ITALC and then the board for approval. Just adding more streets and we're getting a lot done in the next 5 years. And hopefully our PCIs will show that improvement. Any comments or questions?
Excellent report. I'm glad to hear that American Canyon's getting a good press. Okay, any other comments besides just me bragging about my community? Well, then apparently you want me to brag some more about my community. No.
I'm just curious how much money is retained in your Measure U account from year to year. Do you spend it down each year or is it accumulating over time in general? I mean, I know every year is a little different.
It's accumulating over time. I believe we keep a healthy balance in there, but it may be drained after this next coming year because we're doing a lot. Where we see it was our capital improvement program just this year alone is 58 million, and over half of that is transportation projects. Green Island Road is a $20 million project that's under construction total over the last 10 years, but the $15 million lift is this last year. And we have Rancho. We took a big hit this year with Rancho, Knightsbridge, and Melvin, and we're continuing that on with some like the guardrail project, which is a highway safety improvement program project, but with some, I believe that's gas tax that were added in there to help that project. But South Kelly's another big project that's developer funded partially, but also Measure U.
What is your current PCI and what is your goal, say, over the next 2 or 3 or 4 years?
I want to see it go up to 70, but it's dropped down to 58, if I'm not mistaken. We have our PTAP grant. They're supposed to be starting our inspection this year for PCI. So we found out in the last 2 years that with some of our rubberized cape seals, they only give you 17 points. They don't give you a full 100 when you've done those surfaces. So they wait till the following inspection year to see how much higher it should be. They want to make sure it holds up that first year. So they only give you a partial bump. But one of our worst sections in the whole city is Green Island Road. And Rancho was one of the other ones. We had PCIs of 0 to 18. And some of the cape seals, we had zeros that we did these rubberized cape seals and they're holding up 5 years later. So we're looking forward to seeing how the inspection goes this year and how much higher it'll go. I think we'll see an improvement, but we'll see.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other comments? All right. Well, thank you very much for the report. I think this was just a review and file. So we appreciate that, which also then brings us to our consent calendar, minutes and a quarterly financial. I'll entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved, Doring.
Doring moved. Washington second. All in favor say aye. Any opposed? Perfect. That then gets us, there's no regular agenda items. Any future agenda items for the tax agency? Then I'm going to adjourn at 1:16. And that's next regular meeting will be March 18th. And now we call to order the NVTA Board of Directors at 1:16. We already covered our Pledge of Allegiance and I believe our roll call, although we can now recognize that Director Deasy is here.
Yes, it was confirmed at the preceding NVTA-TA meeting, and we do have participation today from Deborah Smith, so we do have a quorum.
All right, perfect. Adoption of the agenda, any changes? I'll entertain a motion. Okay, Washington moves and All right. From Reeves, thank you. All in favor, say aye. Any opposed? All right, public comment. Anyone in the audience? Come on up.
Good afternoon, Chair Joseph and directors of the board. I'm Kara Werner with the Napa County Bicycle Coalition. And I just wanted to share with you that our nominations for Bike Champion of the Year are open until the end of the month, and we would love to receive more of them. So if you know someone in your community who, is a champ, rides to school, holds up bicycling, volunteers, provides free information, we'd love to hear from you. The form is on our website, napabike.org, and it's really short and easy. So please think about nominating someone from your community. We also just wanted to say thank you today to NVTA, who has come on again as a presenting Bike Month sponsor. We're very grateful for that support and partnership. And of course, Bike Champion of the Year is celebrated during Bike Month in May. So we'll have more on that a little bit down the road. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, any other public comments? Anyone online? Oh, well, all righty. Then we can go to reports, and I will have a quick report. As some of you may know, the JPA Ad Hoc Committee met a little before this meeting, and we had 4 items. The consensus from the group relating to the first one, board stipends, after discussion, we felt that it might not be the appropriate time to bring up board stipends, in part because we began to say what was the real issue, and the issues weren't so much around the fiscal or the financial burden of being a member. So, and we were a little concerned that after Measure U gets adopted, it might be bad form to immediately give ourselves a stipend. So we're putting board stipends on hold for now. Secondly, we talked about board composition and the mayoral requirement. And I think staff has come up with some good language that could be introduced into an amended bylaws. But by the same token, the current arrangement allows for an alternative, which I think Yountville is taking full advantage of, which is fine. And that amending the bylaws is something that might be a little more of an ordeal than normal because of the TIFIA loan that we got a couple years back. So the conclusion was good language, and we'll wait. There's some other language changes that are not essential, but would be good for cleaning up a document. So if we ever run into something that needs to be amended, we'll add that and a few others there. So that addressed that. On teleconference meetings, that was seen as a potentially very useful item, but that's existing law, and there's no need to make any changes for that. Which left us to number 4, the strategic plan, and that we have been pursuing. We'll be interviewing the top candidates, and hopefully in March, staff will come forward with a recommendation as to who to hire and so on. So my guess is the ad hoc committee has met its ad hoc responsibilities and probably won't meet again. But that's the update. Yes, unless something else comes up suddenly, then we'll ad hoc ourselves back into existence. No, but I think it's safe to say that we did our job well, and there you have it. Any other board member comments? All right, then we'll move to MTC updates. Director Manfred.
Thank you. MTC has been overseeing the migration of accounts, over 5 million accounts, to Clipper 2.0. And this has been smooth for some, but other people are experiencing problems with it where the Clipper accounts are not seamlessly transitioning. And MTC is directing staff to make sure that any customer who's temporarily lost access to funds or passes due to the transition is made whole. So if you're having a problem, you can contact the Clipper management through MTC and make sure that your Clipper account is still functioning as it should. Yountville resident and NVTA Community Advisory Committee member Ashley Tenshare is being recommended to MTC's Regional Network Management Customer Advisory Group pending commission approval this month. The customer group shares customer perspectives to help shape regional transit policy and implementation planning. Ashley will represent a customer perspective from a small operator, which is Vine Transit here in Napa. The Bay Area Housing Finance Authority, or BAFA, under MTC, closed on 2 projects in December to preserve affordable homes for residents of the North Bay. And notably for us, one of these is in St. Helena. There's a $3 million loan to our town, St. Helena, to acquire affordable housing opportunities for lower income households in a high resource community, which is St. Helena. And then MTC is also revamping the CARE program that provides funding for implementation that centers around projects identified in community-based transportation plans. The first round of funding will include $12 million. 30% are equally distributed to each county participant in MTC, and 70% of the funds are distributed based on the county's share of regional low-income populations. So for us, that is a $562,000 target amount for Napa County projects for technical assistance, and it'll be for moving those projects from early design to being construction ready. And the call for projects will come through this entity, NVTA, to local jurisdictions later this year. So mayors, ears up. And I guess lastly, this is a fun one. There was a clock that was positioned over the Bay Bridge toll booths for many, many decades. And it's got neon and it's Art Deco styled, if anyone remembers commuting to the city back in the day. And it is being carefully restored by CJ Yother of San Leandro. And the clock will be located in a public location in the future. But for now, there's a video of the clock and its history on the MTC website, and I encourage anyone interested in history to check that out. Thank you.
Thank you. ABC.
ABAG.
Okay,
I
all
have
right,
the
I'm
pleasure,
losing it.
I have the
Um,
pleasure of having the chair of ABAG here to report out on ABAG.
Okay, no, I wanted to talk about ABC. We're into alcohol.
I'm not issuing alcohol permits, Chair. Thank you so much to all, for this opportunity, Mayor, to report out. I do serve, currently as president of ABAG, and, I will just, I'll piggyback on to, what Supervisor Manfrey shared on MTC from the BAFA perspective. I had an opportunity to tour that project of our town, St. Helena, which is being property managed by Burbank Housing, who is familiar to us all. And they're going to be doing not just the purchase part of it, but also the rehabilitation of it. So that is 12 units that are at an affordable rate. And one of them is available right now and has beautiful, picturesque vineyard views on the backside, as I'm sure the mayor is aware there. A couple of things from the BAFA to overlap on the ABAG side, and then I'll jump into ABAG. We have a rental assistance program that is a pilot project through BAFA here in Napa County to assist seniors. Because the BAFA funding did not go forward as we had planned through a revenue measure in 2024, we are looking at a revenue measure possibly in 2028 and some language that would enable a citizens initiative to allow that to go forward. But that's, let's say, year and a half into the future at this point. Unfortunately, we'll honor the program that we have, but that pilot program is not one that we'll be able to continue to fund beyond the additional 2 years that we have, nor are we going to be able to replicate it in other areas until we have a new funding stream. We've learned a lot of great lessons on how that rental offset has great impact to seniors here in Napa County, but we will need more funds to be able to move that forward. The two actions, significant actions taken by ABAG in the last month, we approved our joint legislative platform with MTC. One thing that is quite notable here for Napa County in particular is that when it comes to the RENA housing process and what is designated as a high resource area. ABAG and MTC are going to take a very strong approach on how they are going to help define what high resource area is. So for those of you that know this area, you know that Coombsville has some great terrains, does not have sidewalks, and yet when it comes to HCD, they see that as a high resource area where we should be putting a lot of housing that is not connected to resources. So we really do see an opportunity to help educate and to share the struggles that we have, especially in those unincorporated areas. And so there's some very strong language regarding resiliency and connectivity that is included in the legislative platform with ABAG MTC. Also, we have taken a leadership role in working with the large MPOs and other councils of government in the state to bring about some much needed updates to SB 375, the Sustainable Community Strategy. When we started this, Mark, you and I years ago, that was new, right? We were like talking about trees over sidewalks so that people could walk, and we have that. So what comes next, right? How do we make sure it's relevant in this current climate environment that we are facing? And so we're taking a very active role, and we have elicited the services of Daryl Steinberg, the author of 375, to help coach us through how we can make it better. Also, of note, we created a joint community advisory council between ABAG MTC. That's incredibly important because we had this regional council that was opining. It was a lot of people in the room, and we've really streamlined it to be a greater advisory body that can serve both ABAG and MTC's functions. And so with the help of my colleagues on both sides, on behalf of NAPA, representing low-income residents is Karen Nemsick, and on behalf of older adults is Michael Baldini. So we do have some continuity. So instead of having 3 people like we did before, we do have 2 that are specific to NAPA, and those people have been appointed. We do have 1 vacancy because someone unfortunately passed away between the interview to the appointment process. That was from the League of Women Voters, and so that will be addressed in short order. And I also don't know if Supervisor Manfrey previously shared regarding the TOC allocation. Did you share the North Bay? So in regard, we did things kind of, my personal opinion, a little bit backwards. We decided the pot of allocation of funds regarding OBAG 4 and the One Bay Area grants that are arguably the most flexible dollars that we have from the federal government, and how we can incentivize transportation and housing. And so we went ahead and we did the allocations before the politics. And so the politics comes next. That's next week, I believe, next week. But we did the allocations. And one of the things that we did, Napa County sits in a very interesting position, being the only county in the Bay Area that does not meet the transit-oriented communities designation. And that is because we don't have a train station, we don't have a Caltrain, we don't have a SMART, we don't have a BART, we don't have some mega, this is our version of mega, right, of transit agencies. And so it became incredibly apparent to us as your representatives that we could not be treated, we couldn't be left out of the funding equation just because we didn't meet their requirements. And the truth is, we shouldn't have to put a Caltrain or a BART through NAPA in order to be funded to get to a better, similar state of what multimodal transportation looks like. So we went ahead and we advocated or tantrumed our way through making sure that we received a North Bay allocation. So similar to the PCA, the Priority Conservation Area designations that we had received in the past, where the North Bay had a set aside an allotment in recognition of the fact that our topography, our geography, and our location really make us different. We received a $5 million North Bay allocation. So that is some direct funds that will be able to be used for bike pathways, pedestrian safety, intersection safety, and really just be additional funds into our already 8 million, 6 million. So for a total of like 8.1, right? Correct me?
I mean, I think it'll be a total of around $6.5 or $7 million. We'll bring back the One Bay Area grant augmentation to this body probably in April or May.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
But
this is,
yes, it's good that we have this North Bay set aside and the North Bay asked for it to just roll into our individual OBAG allotments. So Napa will receive an additional 1.25 million.
yeah. So I just wanted to let you know, even though we appear to not have a dog in the fight, it serves you well at this moment that you have two representatives on MTC so that we could bring some money home for NVTA.
Thank you.
Mark, Mark, if you don't mind, I have,
Oh,
I thought while you were talking, we also have an update from Highway 37 Committee, which I think
true.
for American Canyon representatives, you're on that committee, so you probably already know. But there was a miscalculation in the engineering that is resulting in a significant cost overrun. So there's a funding gap there, which people are working on solving of about $55 million. That's an ongoing conversation and I think worth noting to the group. So thank you.
On the plus side, they did talk a little bit about train service, and American Canyon is probably a likely hub of some sort as we develop rail service from Sonoma County over to Solano. So there was some good news in addition to dealing with a $50 million cost overrun. That takes the fun out of almost any meeting, but it was there. Okay, thank you very much. Now we move to the executive director's update.
Yes, Danielle Schmitz, Executive Director. Before you is a copy of the NVTA 2025 annual report. We also have copies in the back, and we also have oriented it so it's mostly a digital copy. So we printed out very few, but let us know if you would like any to take up to your jurisdiction. Thank you to Emily Cherrier for her hard work on this. Vine Transit has received a CPUC grant of $160,000+ for extended service on the American Canyon Shuttle. We will now operate till 7 p.m. in American Canyon. Vine Transit will operate till 7 p.m. and Saturday service will be from 8:30 to 5:30 p.m. So thank you to Libby in particular on the transit team for identifying this creative funding source. I'm happy to report the Yountville B had a 15% ridership increase in the second quarter of fiscal year 25-26 compared to the previous quarter, and our transit director has been working diligently on expanding the service area. So we will now be serving not serving Domain Shandong, but servicing the area of Domain Shandong. And now that Ponchas is open, we're hoping that will also help increase ridership. Included in your consent agenda is NVTA's annual independent financial audit report. So kudos to Tony and the finance team on another clean audit with no financial findings or material weaknesses. And lastly, there is no verbal Caltrans update today, but the map is included in your packet. And I just wanted to note two director order projects. One is the Yountville, between Yountville and Yount Mill Road, so Madison and Yount Mill Road. Caltrans has been working nightly on repaving that section of roadway. And if you are a local or have to traverse that area, you knew it was much needed. There was these really deep ruts that were causing large tractor trailers to go into the shoulder, for instance. So thank you to Caltrans, Amani, and team for listening to the locals. There was a lot of pushback on that project, and so it should be finished by mid-March. And then second is the culvert work at Oakville, between Oakville Cross and Rutherford. There was a sinkhole, the culvert needs to be completely replaced there. We've been getting a lot of comments about what that project is. There is it goes down to single lane closure from 6 p.m. to 7 p.m. So that has started, but they will be doing a 4-night full closure at night, diverting traffic to Silverado Trail. And that will start once we have 4 consecutive days of no rain. And we will keep all the jurisdictions abreast of when that is going to happen. It probably will not happen for another week because, as you know, we're supposed to be getting hit with another storm, I think tomorrow. So it was going to start tonight, but because we don't have 4 consecutive days of no rain, it probably will not start till next Thursday. And that concludes my report.
All right, thank you. And as you pointed out, there won't be a formal Caltrans update. So that means, and we don't have any presentation. So that gets us to the consent calendar. Number of items, if anyone wanted to pull an item, let me know. Otherwise, I'll entertain a motion to approve the consent calendar.
Move to approve the consent calendar.
Okay, oh,
Eisenberg.
Eisenberg and Washington. Thank you. All those in favor say aye. Any opposed? All right, we're on schedule. That gets us to item 12.1, the draft Napa County Active Transportation Plan release. Patrick Band. Or not.
Good afternoon, Chair, members of the board. Patrick Band, Senior Planner with NVTA, here to present item 12.1, the release of the Napa Countywide Active Transportation Plan. With me today is Emily Shandy from GHD, who's been our fearless support for this project over the last year and a half. Get the presentation up. So this item is to do a formal release of the countywide active transportation plan for a 28-day public comment period. And then we will be coming back to this board for formal adoption, hopefully in March. Next slide, please. So why are we doing a countywide active transportation plan? You'll see on the right side of the slide, our countywide pedestrian plan was developed and adopted in 2016. And our countywide bicycle plan adopted in 2019. And these two documents have been incredibly helpful for both NVTA and our local jurisdictions in identifying priorities and being able to help us pursue funding and grants and so forth. But they're certainly beginning to show their age. And so we wanted to make sure we have a set of plans that are reflective of local priorities, ensure that we can continue to rely on these documents to pursue funding, but also address some shortcomings of those documents, particularly around collecting and maintaining GIS data, so mapping of where our existing and proposed facilities are located, engaging the public, addressing changes in the last 7 to 10 years in state law and regional guidance around active transportation facilities. That's new daylighting laws, setting vehicles back from intersections, new types of bikeways that have been approved, changes in the types of what we call sharrows or shared lanes and where those can be applied and where they can't. And also just to evaluate, how have we done over the last 7 to 10 years in implementing our goals, and how do we want to establish new goals moving forward? Next slide, please. So we kicked off this project in the fall of 2024 and spent a significant number of months doing data collection, identifying where are our existing active transportation facilities, where are our sidewalks, where are our bike lanes. For the first time, we did a countywide collection of existing sidewalks and crosswalks. So now we have a data layer that we can rely upon moving forward to identify both where are our sidewalks and where are those gaps that we want to prioritize closing so people can walk, whether it's from a transit stop to their school or to other local destinations. We did extensive community outreach, which we'll talk about in the next slide, throughout kind of the spring 2025, throughout all of 2025, actually. And starting in the fall of last year, began to develop recommendations for what types of improvements can and should be made throughout all of our local communities, and did that work in close coordination with our local jurisdictions, working really hand in glove with our public works and sometimes our planning teams at local jurisdictions to ensure that the recommendations that this plan are providing are supported by local jurisdiction staff and can be moved forward. And now we're here in winter 2026 to present the full draft plan. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned, community engagement was particularly important in this planning effort. We had nearly 2,000 unique engagements with members of the public, whether that was through our in-person events that we held in the city of Napa and in Calistoga, more than 30 participation events that we did, whether it's a presentation to a local board or commission or committee, or partnership events we presented to the Democrats of Napa Valley and a number of other community groups that expressed an interest in hearing what these recommendations were. And then significant online opportunities for people to weigh in, share their thoughts and concerns, what was working for them and what was not in terms of walking and biking around Napa County. So we had a couple sets of interactive maps that received almost 500 comments collectively, and then a survey that asked for both qualitative and quantitative feedback from residents and visitors about, again, what was working and what wasn't, and received nearly 200 responses on that survey. And all of that information throughout that roughly 2025 period went into collecting and recommending what we have in the plan today. Next slide. I believe, Emily, you're going to take over now. Great. Here, why don't you take that one now?
All right. Thank you. So included in this plan, we start off by capturing a countywide vision for walking and bicycling, and that's supported by goals and objectives that walk us through a roadmap to get there. We have a countywide policy framework that, again, consolidates a lot of the efforts happening in the communities around the county and documented in the two previous plans, and strives for consistency countywide in how we're moving toward a better walking and biking environment. There's a best practices toolkit, which I'll speak more about in a moment. And then we have a countywide assessment of the needs and an overview of where those existing facilities are and the recommendations that our team identified, along with a prioritization process we went through to narrow down that very broad vision for investment in walking and bicycling to a more achievable near-term set of projects. At the end of the plan, there are jurisdiction-specific chapters that really pull out the information for each of the incorporated jurisdictions in the county, the cities, and the town, and capture their specific individual existing conditions, the recommendations, the local context and needs, and then leave space for any local specific policies with some flexibility for anything that you would like to add. We can go to the next slide, please. The policy framework in the plan is based on the Safe Routes Ease framework, so it captures a number of topics: engineering, education, engagement, encouragement, and evaluation to make sure we're measuring how we're doing towards implementation and increasing walking and bicycling. As I mentioned, those policies serve as a countywide baseline for consistency, but again, leaving that space for flexibility for locally appropriate policies where appropriate, and you'll see the placeholders for that in the draft plan. Next slide. The toolkit I mentioned provides design guidance that's updated to current best practices for a wide variety of walking and bicycling facilities, from basic things like sidewalks and bike lanes up through more innovative intersection treatments and crossing enhancements that can improve safety and comfort and really make walking and bicycling more attractive to everyone in our communities. It is formatted as an appendix to the plan, but it's also set up as a standalone resource document that's available for download individually from the project website. Next slide, please. The needs assessment that we went through to identify the projects included in this draft plan was really based on reviewing the previous planning documents first, doing an audit of those and asking ourselves not just what's been implemented since these plans were adopted, but what do we want to carry forward in terms of the remaining recommendations, and what is it time to let go of? If it hasn't been built by now, is there a reason for that? And is it a recommendation that we should not put in the current plan going forward? We made sure that we were looking at where the high injury network corridors are and making recommendations to improve safety at those critical locations. We mapped the bicyclist level of traffic stress countywide, which we know fills in some of the gaps in the safety analysis that collision data doesn't reflect. Bicyclists tend to avoid roadways that have a highly stressful experience for them, and so we may see lower collision rates there because people simply aren't riding. So looking at traffic stress gives us an idea of where there may be barriers to connectivity between trip origins and destinations, where we want to look at providing those connections along contiguous low-stress routes that aren't interrupted by high-stress barriers. And then, of course, feeding in from all of the community outreach that we did across most of last year, what the community told us they want, not just what their priorities are, but the specific projects and requests that came in person, online, through those mapping tools that we mentioned. And Patrick is going to walk through some of the bicycle network recommendations.
Thank you.
Did you get that working?
So in terms of the existing bicycle network, again, we wanted to make sure that we were identifying what do we have out in the world right now before we made recommendations for, okay, what is our next step moving forward? We collected this information, as we mentioned, over about 3 or 4 months in late 2024, early 25. This kind of gives you a snapshot of both what is our 2019 bike plan existing mileage, and then how does that compare to what we have today? So you'll see, for example, in the city of Calistoga, starting with about 6 miles of existing facilities in 2019 to 6.9 miles in 2025. Now, I do want to provide a little bit of a caveat, although I think this information is very important to provide in terms of kind of benchmarking our progress. We also needed to go through an evaluation process to identify, are there facilities that provide some benefits to people walking or biking, but that don't meet the strict criteria of what we might call a class 2 bike lane or a shared use pathway. Maybe it's narrower than the minimum standards for that class 1 bikeway or shared use lane to meet that criteria. And so we had to pull that out of the plan. And so what you will see in this table and the plan documents as well is that occasionally we'll see what we expect to see kind of stark differences in the 2019 to 2025 mileage. So for example, in the town of Yountville, actually went down from 4.2 miles to 3.5 miles. That doesn't mean that bike facilities were removed by the town of Yountville. It just means that our analysis of what can we actually call an existing bikeway was more refined. And we wanted to make sure that we were only counting those facilities that met minimum standards. So just a little bit of a caveat there. Overall, what we're seeing, though, is that in 2019, we're anticipating about 590 miles of existing and proposed facilities. And in this current plan, we're looking at about 602. So a fairly minimal increase in the total number of miles. Overall, what this plan is really recommending, as Emily talked about, is prioritizing those things like safety and connectivity. So what we're largely seeing is a change in the types of bike facilities that are being recommended, moving away from those shared facilities where bikes and vehicles are sharing the roadway without any kind of vertical separation, towards safer, more protected facilities, or in neighborhood contexts where those shared roadways are implementing traffic calming or other treatments that make it more comfortable and reduce that level of traffic stress from that graphic we saw a couple slides ago, so that really all ages and abilities can feel comfortable and confident riding their bikes or walking on sidewalks in our neighborhoods and communities. Next slide, please. So this is the draft bicycle network in the 2026 active transportation plan. And what you'll see is this is looking at the type of bike facility by jurisdiction. And this kind of goes back to what I was just talking about in terms of the types of facilities. In the 2019 bike plan, we didn't have separated bikeways as an option. So now we have nearly 6 miles of proposed separated protected bike facilities being recommended. We've also seen a significant increase in the shared use paths, class 1 facilities like the Vine Trail, and a slight reduction overall in those class 3 shared facilities, particularly in those contexts where it might not be appropriate due to higher speeds and volumes of vehicles on those roadways. At the same time, that 258 miles of class 3 does kind of jump out. It's the largest category by far, and you'll see that's mostly in the unincorporated county. And that's because we have a lot of rural roads that tend to be steeper, higher volumes and speeds for vehicles that are very popular with many recreational cyclists, but don't have sufficient right-of-way width or have other constraints that would prohibit us from realistically planning and recommending additional facilities that have greater separation from cars. And so that's just kind of the reality of wanting to provide the best kind of classification that we can within the context of the valley in which we live. Next slide, please. And I think we're going to go over prioritization and then pass it back to Emily for some pedestrian recommendations. So that nearly 600 miles of facilities is a big number. And so we wanted to look at how can we bring that down to something that's realistic, that's achievable in what we call the near term, roughly the next 7 to 10 years. And so we went through an evaluation process looking at those safety, equity, and connectivity criteria, which were goals identified at the beginning of the planning process, and then evaluating plan consistency and the community support for various types of improvements. We also did a manual review looking at, where might there be parallel or overlapping recommendations, and kind of a more holistic review of what do we want to do in the near term to make sure the most number of people can get where they want to go on a low stress set of bike networks. And so we came up with this table, and then that also ties back to specific recommendations in the plan. Next slide.
So on the pedestrian side, it's obviously a little bit of a different undertaking trying to inventory and recommend sidewalks. It's a much finer grain scale than bicycle recommendations. But countywide, as Patrick mentioned, we did do a sidewalk inventory. So we were able to capture a complete inventory of existing sidewalks and gaps within all of the incorporated jurisdictions and then key population centers in the unincorporated county where we wanted to focus on that effort. We combined that with our analysis of key destinations, those trip origins within the community, and then made our recommendations for sidewalk projects based on where there were sidewalk gaps that were within about 500 feet of a key destination. We aligned those with the emerging active transportation corridors where there were bicycle facilities being recommended that we wanted to sort of create these active transportation corridors to focus on for investment. And where sidewalk gaps were present on both sides of the street, we took a look at which side it made sense to prioritize completing the sidewalk network to make sure that we had a complete sidewalk on at least one side of the street rather than a patchwork across both sides of the network. Next slide, please. The pedestrian network includes not just sidewalks, but also those shared use paths that are shared between people walking and bicycling. So the proposed 74 miles of shared use paths, that is the same 74 miles that's included in the bicycle network. That's not an additional 74 miles that we're proposing. But you can see of the existing miles, there's about 526 existing miles of sidewalk in the county. We're proposing 18 new miles, spread fairly proportionally across the jurisdictions, focused most in the city of Napa, which you can see they have the most existing sidewalk by far. Next slide, please. And Patrick's going to talk through the next steps after today.
So again, the item before the board today is to release the plan and open the 28-day public comment period. That will bring public comment open through the next NVTA board meeting on March 18th. We certainly encourage members of the public and jurisdictions to review this plan in detail during that 28-day period. And if there are comments, we certainly encourage individuals to provide them sooner rather than later. I will note that there are always going to be some errors and omissions and things we missed, typos, spelling, things like that. And we're certainly going to work on cleaning those up. But if there are bigger public comments or questions or concerns that come up, we'll work closely with each jurisdiction or the relevant jurisdiction for that particular comment to evaluate whether a change needs to be made in the set of network recommendations, whether it's on the pedestrian or the bicycle side, in the next 4 weeks or so. We'll be returning again in 1 month to consider adoption of the full plan by this body, and then invite each of the jurisdictions to adopt the plan individually. As Emily discussed, there is an individual chapter in the countywide plan for each local jurisdiction. And by adopting that plan individually, jurisdiction by jurisdiction, that allows our local communities to enforce those policies, to incorporate those policies into your own processes at a local level, as well as make sure that when there are developments that come forward, that they can be conditioned to incorporate those recommended facilities, whether it's a sidewalk gap closure or providing additional right-of-way for a future Class 1 pathway, things of that sort. And NVTA staff will continue to coordinate with local jurisdictions throughout that process, which we anticipate happening over the next 4 to 6 months. I think that's it. Next slide. has a link to the plan as well as a QR code in case that's a little easier for those of you with a mobile phone in your pockets. And happy to answer any questions that you might have. Thank you very much.
All right, well, thank you for the report. And I looked through it a little bit. I would encourage everybody on the board to check out your section and then work with staff if there's anything you'd like to add or subtract or modify, or at least be aware of it so that when it comes back in March, we'll make sure it reflects as much as we can a good quality document. Any questions from the board, comments? Yes.
Recently, there was a change in regards to the setbacks for a parking to crosswalks. And I definitely know that in the county unincorporated areas that are of denser populations, the absence of existing sidewalks, since that is not a business enterprise that the county typically engages in. I think that's the right way to say it. I am interested in knowing how has that impacted the assessment of sidewalks, because the sidewalk in essence and the sidewalk going up to the intersection and to protecting those intersections and the pedestrians right of way is impacted by parking and also those areas that are shared path for bicycles. So have you seen any impact in regards to those no parking zone area increases?
Start.
I'm happy to. Yeah. So yes, certainly that's a law that we've been well aware of, not just in the development of this plan, but more broadly in our practice. It's something that is addressed in the toolkit that I mentioned. So there is a whole section on that daylighting law and restricting parking to make sure that we're improving safety in that way. It's not something that we did individual spot recommendations for in this plan, just given the scale of the county. In the unincorporated areas where you're talking about not having sidewalks, I'm not sure I understand the question fully for what you're asking, because the law about restricting parking where there is a legal crosswalk, whether or not there's markings across the roadway, right? Even if it's unpaved, a sidewalk on the side of the roads where that reaches an intersection, that's a legal crosswalk where a pedestrian has the right of way, and you would not be supposed to park within 20 feet of that. In terms of implementation and how agencies would enforce that, I think it would be challenging. It would likely end up being more of an enforcement and education effort rather than being able to red curb something where you don't have a sidewalk with a curb. But certainly it is a safety practice that applies whether there's sidewalk present or not.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. I think that that's kind of one of the challenges that we have, where there's been some residents who have said, well, if you're not putting in sidewalks, right, we don't have with all the miles, with all due respect to the other jurisdictions, you don't have the obligations that we have at the county. Some have suggested of just even the addition of the curb, but to be able to do appropriate striping, but that curb then would impede the shared unpaved path of what is right now serving as the method for walking. So that's kind of some of the concerns I have, and just, how we go about addressing this and having it be reflective in this, because we certainly are going to need to prioritize that safety, but you can't do it simply with a curb.
Yeah, and I think that that's where in the policies document, again, we established a floor really of policies that all of our jurisdiction partners, felt that they could kind of adopt and move forward with. And one of the goals in doing that, whether it's with daylighting or any range of 50 other items, is to provide direction consistent with, in this case, the state law that restricts parking approaching an intersection, but also recognize that local jurisdictions are going to have to implement these recommendations and these policies, and there's significant discretion that a jurisdiction may choose to take in terms of how that's done, and also on a case-by-case basis, based on whether you're looking at an unincorporated county where you might have a gravel shoulder, where there is no sidewalk and no curb and gutter. It's going to look very different how that's implemented and how that's enforced, as Emily said, compared to within the downtown city of Napa, where the city has already begun implementing red curbs approaching intersections in some locations where there are higher pedestrian volumes. So a lot of these recommendations, a lot of the policies in the plan do end up being kind of a local implementation question on a case-by-case basis. And that's where in this document, we wanted to provide general direction consistent with state law, but also recognize that ultimately these are going to be implemented by local jurisdictions. Does that answer your question? Okay.
All right. Any other comments? I think this is kind of a no formal action is required other than maybe a motion to go ahead and distribute it, or
Yeah, it's just the action is to release the
Okay.
plan for public comment, so.
okay. Is that require a board action or is?
That's the recommendation
Oh,
from
okay.
staff, so yeah.
Then I'll entertain a motion to release the draft plan.
So moved. Doring.
Okay, Doring and Ramos. All those in favor say aye.
Public comment?
Any opposed? All right. Then.
Sorry, did we ask for public comment? Could we ask for public comment? I know,
Oops.
yeah,
Good point. Obviously we didn't, but we're going to.
yes.
So any public comment? Yes. Yes. You know, there comes a point.
I
where you-
withdraw my motion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's recall that whole action. We were just testing you. Yeah.
Hi, Directors. Kara again with the Bike Coalition. There's so much to love about this plan, and I wish I could spend this 3 minutes heaping praise on it. I will be back to do that because it's a huge leap forward. But because the public comment period is still open and it hasn't been adopted yet, we want to focus on one thing we'd really like to see changed between now and then. And that is that this draft plan, it plans no improvements to bike facilities on Silverado Trail. Not in the next 5 to 7 years, nor in its vision through 2050. And this is one of the most biked and most dangerous roads in the county. Given recent conversations, we thought that there would be proposed facilities that are bike lanes with buffers, because that has, we've been in conversation about that and they've already put that in on part of the trail. There's pinch points. It wasn't put in perfectly regularly or consistently throughout that section, but we have been nothing but grateful for that. And we've heard nothing but positive feedback from the bicycling community about that change. The need for upgrades on Silverado Trail is super clear. It's the 5th deadliest local road in the entire Bay Area. Much of it falls within the high injury network. And the draft AT plan itself notes that the public identified it as a consistent concern. If the draft stays as is, I don't know what I'll say to bicyclists when they ask how it was approved without the inclusion of any feasible upgrades, again, on one of the most biked roads and dangerous roads. My understanding is that the hesitation around including the buffers is about uncertainty about whether the upgrades can be delivered consistently along the corridor. But we see the bike plan as a high-level planning document, not a set of street designs. While the proposals should be realistic, they should not require 100% certainty. The space to include them does exist for many long stretches. And this is really important to us because, and you may not realize this, but when it's not in the plan, we've certainly encountered both city and county staff alike saying it's a no-go. When we've asked for things that aren't in the plan but are recommended by the bike facilities guide that is in this excellent toolkit, it's often a no, it's not in the bike plan. So that's our fear, that this is going to set up no change on one of the most needed roads until 2050. If we had a magic wand, we'd install protected bike lanes. But we thought we found a more financially feasible treatment that would increase separation and therefore safety. We're not asking as well for a guarantee that those buffers contain rumble strips. We know that is a separate conversation and proximity to residences needs to be determined. But buffers need to be included in the plan so that these conversations can happen in the future. Caltrans has implemented miles of buffered bike lanes on Highway 29. Where space allows, we see no reason similar improvements could not be made on Silverado Trail. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. And I apologize for not giving you that opportunity sooner. Any other public comment? All right. I, just a quick comment. Some of the theory behind the Vine Trail, I think, is that that's supposed to be the kind of the north-south shared path corridor. Which doesn't diminish the importance of Silverado, just does give you an alternative that's there.
Yeah, and without getting into too much discussion, what I will say is that we've heard this comment from the Bicycle Coalition. Certainly appreciate the input and concern, and are in conversation with county staff about what an appropriate modification, if any, might be before this plan comes back to this board in a month.
Great. Okay. Director.
On that note, as an avid bicyclist who takes the Vine Trail and the Silverado Trail, they serve different purposes. The Vine Trail is a mixed-use trail, pedestrians, bicyclists. It's a wonderful trail. I'm an absolute advocate, and sometimes I just like to enjoy the Vine Trail, and it's great. And it's also great for, I mean, a huge number of people. If to go north-south and you want to go a little bit faster, you don't want to worry about pedestrians, and you want a few hills on the way, then Silverado Trail is the place to go. And like I say, I use both. I see people on the Silverado Trail on bicycles all the time. I think we have two different options with two different purposes, and it is dangerous and it worries. I worry when I'm on the Silverado Trail that the traffic is so intense, and there really is, the only separation is a line painted, and it would be nice if it could be made a little bit safer, or a lot bit safer.
All right, good point. All right, if that's the case, let's try to do this correctly. Well, as long as I'm at it, anyone online that raised a hand? Try to make the same mistake only once. All right, then I will entertain another motion to approve releasing the draft county action or countywide active transportation plan.
Second.
Ramos and Doring. All those in favor say aye again. Any opposed? Thank you. Hey, sooner or later I'll get it right. All right, this moves us to 12.2, State Route 29, American Canyon Alternative Analysis. Grant, what have you got for us?
Good afternoon, Chair Joseph, Vice Chair Doring, and directors of the board. My name is Grant Bailey, I'm the engineering manager with NVTA. I'll be presenting item 12.2, the American Canyon SR29 corridor alternative analysis. And joining me this afternoon online, we have members of our consultant team from Kimley Horn, Parag Mehta, the project manager, and the traffic lead, Ravi Patagunta. I believe Parag is on. If not Parag, Ravi's definitely there. All right, so if we go to the next slide once we get Parag set up, if he's there. So an overview of the presentation, which I've given once to this board and twice to some members of this board. So I've kind of cut it down a little bit, but we'll do a project alternative overview. We'll look at the signalization and roundabout alternatives. Then we'll move into the intersection analysis that compared how traffic moves through the SR29 corridor under each alternative, and show how the signalization alternative is dramatically improved when compared to the roundabout alternative. And we'll move into the broader alternative evaluation that was performed in light of the information on the intersection analysis. And then I'll, I guess, complete the presentation with the recommended action that staff is recommending the board take. Next slide, please. So just a refresher on the project area, the SR29 corridor in American Canyon is roughly between American Canyon Road and Napa Junction Road on State Route 29. The purpose of the project is to improve mobility for all modes, vehicles, pedestrians, bicyclists, and transit users, improve safety for all users of the corridor, improve transit travel time and reliability through the corridor, and support residential and commercial development along the corridor. The need or the purpose is informed by the need. Currently, the corridor lacks multimodal connectivity, public transit facilities, and low level of traffic stress routing options. The intersections are also constrained, which leads to extensive queuing and delays. And the number of collisions along the corridor exceeds the state average for similar facilities statewide. Next slide, please. So the two alternatives, or the two build alternatives under consideration, there's also a no build alternative, which would not make any improvements to the corridor and leave conditions as they are today. But for the two build alternatives, alternative one is signalization improvements along the corridor. We would replace 4 existing signals and add 2 to unsignalized intersections. At those signalized intersections, we would also implement transit priority and queue jump lanes. And for the length of the corridor, we would add a business access and transit lane, or a BAT lane. Alternative 2 would implement multi-lane roundabouts at 6 intersections, with American Canyon Road remaining signalized under that alternative. Regardless of which alternative is carried forward, there's work that's common to both alternatives, and that includes constructing a physically separated Class 1 shared use path on both sides of the corridor, lowering the speed limit from the current 50 and 55 mile an hour speed limit to the goal of 35 miles an hour, construct 4 bus transit stops or bus islands at the north and south ends of the corridor, with the possibility to expand to 6 with an interim stop midway through the corridor. We construct a mobility hub with end-of-trip facilities such as bike lockers, electric vehicle charging, possibility for a refreshment kiosk and other amenities. And then we'd also reconfigure the intersections to improve pedestrian crossings by shortening crossing distances with bulb outs, providing pedestrian refuge islands, and other improvements to improve safety and reduce crossing time. And you can see there on the right-hand side of the slide, there are excerpts. I think these are both of Donaldson Way that demonstrate the differences in the roundabout and the signalization alternative. I'll highlight that the red lanes there are the business access and transit lanes. They're highlighted for conceptual purposes, but in reality, they likely will just be asphalt colored. Next slide, please. So before we get into the intersection analysis and comparison between the two alternatives, I wanted to set some context for roundabout capacity and the existing peak hour volumes along the corridor today. So for 2-lane roundabouts, the capacity in vehicles per hour is between 1,600 and 1,800 vehicles per hour. And for 3-lane roundabouts, it increases to 2,100 to 2,300 vehicles per hour. When comparing these roundabout capacities to existing peak hour volumes, we're seeing much higher peak hour volumes along the SR 29 corridor. At Napa Junction Road, in the AM hour, peak hour, we have about 3,250 vehicles per hour, and then the PM hour that increases to more than 3,500. At Donaldson Road, we have over 3,400 vehicles per hour in the morning, and in the evening, over 3,600. And at American Canyon Road, in the morning, it's 3,900 vehicles and almost 4,500 vehicles in the PM peak hour. And just generally speaking for the corridor, the annual average daily traffic on the corridor is 45,000 vehicles per day. So this information was taken from traffic counts, and we refined it and translated it further into level of service information for each intersection. If we go to the next slide, we have the level of service table here for each intersection. But before we go into that table, I actually wanted to define level of service a little bit more. Level of service is defined by 6 letter grades, A through F. A through D are acceptable levels of service, with level of service A being free-flowing traffic. Level of D is an intersection that's at capacity but still operating acceptably. And then level E and F are unacceptable levels of service. Levels of service translate to average delay in seconds per vehicle, with acceptable levels of service topping out at 55 seconds of delay, and anything beyond 55 seconds is an unacceptable level of service. So moving back to the table, kind of in the middle of the slide, on the far left, we have the 6 intersections under consideration that'll receive improvements under this project. And second from the left, we have existing conditions of the intersections on the corridor today. So you can see that 3 of those intersections in either the AM or the PM peak hour are failing currently. A little bit more orientation. The first letter in each column is the AM hour, peak hour traffic level of service, and then the letter following in parentheses is the PM peak hour traffic level of service for the intersection. Moving on to alternative 1, in the opening year in 2030, which is the expected opening year for this project. Under the signalization alternative, we see an immediate improvement from current traffic operations under the existing condition today. As we look 20 years out, which is the design life for a project according to Caltrans design practices, we do see a decline in that level of service at 3 of those intersections, which is to be expected with the growth that was modeled for the project. And then by contrast, looking at alternative 2, in the opening year under the roundabout scenario, we see a decrease in traffic operations compared to the existing conditions today, almost immediately at opening. Looking further out to the 2050 design year, we see failing in almost every intersection in both the AM and PM peak hour. So this intersection analysis made the team step back and consider, is roundabouts even worth delivering under this or through this phase of the project? And so we took a broader look at the different considerations and performed an alternative analysis. If we go to the next slide. We put together about 10 criteria, considering purpose and need, cost, right-of-way, safety improvements, and a number of other criteria, and evaluated each project on a qualitative and quantitative basis. We based the criteria on adopted plans, traffic modeling, cost estimates, and safety data. We assigned equal weighting to all the criteria, and the evaluation is comparative. So if one alternative performs better, it scores better. And the alternatives can tie. They can perform equally, they can perform equally. So if we go to the next slide, this slide shows the alternative evaluation. We have the 2 alternatives on the far right. Alternative 1 scored a 9, and alternative 2, the roundabout, scored a 3. I'll leave this up here for the board and the public to have an opportunity to review, and maybe a minute or 2 we'll continue. As the board is aware, I did present this information at the last board meeting, and since then, this information was also presented to the City of American Canyon Council and the NVTA Technical Advisory Committee. At the American Canyon City Council meeting, there was general support expressed by the council, as well as general support from the public for the signalization alternative. Also at the TAC meeting, the Public Works directors and staff also expressed general support for proceeding with alternative one. So if we go to the next slide. Based on the information in the alternative evaluation and the intersection analysis, staff's recommending the board approve advancing alternative one as the preferred alternative for environmental clearance and discontinue further analysis of alternative two, which is roundabouts. Next slide. That concludes my presentation. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you. All right, I'll save my comments for later. Any comments from the board before we have public comment? All right. Let's have some public comment. Because I think there's somebody out there who wants to say something.
Good afternoon, Chair, Board. Erica Amon-Smithies, Public Works Director, City of American Canyon. I'm here today to provide support of the Napa Valley Transportation Authority's staff recommendation to advance alternative one, the signalization intersections, and to move on with environmental review and engineering and discontinue further analysis of the roundabouts. It's clear from the slideshow today that the smart choice is to move forward the intersection improvements and sharpen the focus on what matters most now, actionable improvements, deliverability, and results. It's wise to set aside options that add cost and risk to the project without demonstrating better performance. We can all see the level of service is not going to improve, which was stunning to us, but that's why we're here in the study. Highway 29 is important for everyone in this valley. It's a connection to the broader Bay Area, and it's exciting to reimagine as a continuous technology-enabled transit corridor, and we're going to be using for multiple multimodal and multi-benefit. Alternative one is a lower cost and is more straightforward to deliver and easy to see how smart signal investments supporting transit could also improve reliability for everyone who uses this corridor. We thank the Napa Valley Transportation Authority for the continued partnership with American Canyon. We welcome the opportunity to continue working with NVTA and Caltrans throughout the remaining process. And we look forward to the next conversations about funding the next phases of this.
All right, thank you. You're welcome. Any other public comments? Anybody online? Hey, all right, Director Washington.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I just want to thank Erica for clearly outlining American Canyon's support for alternative one. And I, as mayor of American Canyon, as well as a board member, I think this is the most efficient way, and plus with the feedback that we got back from our community, that we should move forward with it. And I look forward to our partnership with NVTA and in the future.
Okay, thank you. And the other half would also agree that alternative one makes the most sense. But I'd like to throw out three asterisks or something to consider. The first I've been saying for years, so I'm just going to say it again because my theory is if I say it enough time, it'll just become, this is the way it's supposed to be. At the corner of American Canyon and SR 29, I know the signalization was always going to be there, and I know there'll be some improvements, but I just want to go out there on the record again. Please look at the northeast corner and explore the possibility of making it a free right so that people that are using that Flosden American Canyon 29 can just make a free right and get on and merge with 29. So that would be my ask. The second one is, as I said last month, I think our traffic congestions started when we added 2 signals back in the day when Walmart was first built. And I'm willing to believe that if we add 2 more signals, it will not make it better. It will probably make it worse. And I'd like to suggest that we, put in the infrastructure, but defer putting in 2 signals at Crawford or South Napa Junction until we see how the signalization works, because it's a lot easier to add a signal than to take one out. And I think we have a good opportunity at the signal at Rio Del Mar and Eucalyptus, because they are so close, to see if we can make those 2 play well together. Then I'm on board with signals everywhere. But if it's a nightmarish thing, then then maybe we're better not to add the two. And then the final one is I recognize South Kelly is outside of the project area, but if there's some way that we can make that signal synchronize with the signals in American Canyon, it will be in our best interest long-term. And I don't know if that's something American Canyon has to come up with as we're improving that intersection anyway, or if there's a way to do something, because I think if the signals work in American Canyon, that's great. 12 and 29 gets turned into a grade separated interchange, that's great. Ironically, the South Napa or South Kelly signal will be the only thing between Vallejo and north of Napa City that is kind of its own little signal, which I'm sure will mean its own little kind of congestion. So somehow integrating it with the American Canyon package. I realize it's not in the program, and so it's going to be difficult, but figure out some way to make that play well with each other at some point in the future.
Mark,
So
We,
yes,
a quick question on that signal on South Kelly.
yeah.
Is it on the south side of the street or the north side? Because if it's south side, I heard you earlier say the south side belongs to American Canyon.
Well, that's the road itself. The intersection belongs to Caltrans probably, but I just want to make sure that, and I don't know what kinds of infrastructure you need, some kind of conduit and something like that. But if there's a way to prepare that signal for, smart technology, that would be the ideal. Even if that means we end up coming up with the money to pull it off when we're redoing the intersection anyway.
yeah, we can do that. And there's, technology has come a long way as far as having the signals talking to each other. In fact, we can even do it with radio frequency, or, not hardwired devices. So I'll work with, Erica and Caltrans to, see if we can get some upgrades under the Caltrans project that's, American Canyon is coordinating, with at South Kelly Road. So we can, I guess, future-proof the coordination between the forthcoming NVTA project and the project that's, going into construction soon.
That I think our motorists will appreciate it. Okay, so those are my three asks. So, all right, any other comments? Then with that in mind, I will entertain a motion to go ahead and approve alternative one as the preferred option and pursue that only.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
Okay, Washington and Williams. All those in favor say aye. Any opposed? All right, thank you all very much. We're moving this project forward. And that brings us to 12.3, an agreement between Equans for a computer-aided dispatch and automated vehicle location system with an automated demand response dispatching software. Good Lord, that just takes a lot of time to introduce it. Rebecca, take it away, please.
Thank you, Chair Joseph, members of the board. Rebecca Schenk, I'm the Director of Transit here at the Napa Valley Transportation Authority, and hope to clear up what is inevitably a rather long title. So we'll be talking today on item 12.3, which is an approval of a particular agreement. And so we'll go through a little bit of the history of these different softwares that we've had, our recent experience. I'll talk through this RFI and RFP process. We'll see if it hails outside, and then we'll move on.
Competing with the Mother Nature, so
I know.
I apologize.
Yesterday it hailed down here, so we might be in for a treat. And then we'll go into what this ultimately is really a rider benefit project. Going on to the next slide here. There's a long history, and so you'll see on this timeline that I have on the next slide a little bit about first, what is a CAD AVL system? So basically what it means is Lonnie here, who's sitting at our bus maintenance facilities, probably in dispatch right now, right? What he can do is he can track our vehicles in real time. And in terms of the CAD AVL system, kind of the key thing is it's specific to our fixed route. So we're talking, he knows where the route 10 is, he knows where the route 11 is, he knows where the route 29 is. So that's what it does. And the same information it shares with him, it kind of shares out to the public. So if I am waiting for the bus right now, I'm like, okay, do I have time to run into the A&P and wait for the hail to pass? Or do I really need to be here because it'll be here in a minute? So that's what the CAD AVL system essentially does. And then on the next side, we're doing a demand response. So this contract is together. Right now, we exist in a world where we have two separate contracts, one for CAD AVL and one for demand response. And the demand response system that we use is, say, over in customer service here in the breezeway, someone calls from the Yountville Veterans Home, wants to go down to R&D Kitchen, for example, or in this case, in St. Helena, wants to go somewhere. They either enter information in their app using our existing demand response system, or they call, and here in customer service, they put in your origin and destination, and then that vehicle, it sends a ping to that vehicle. It knows where to pick you up and where you're going. So those are the two systems that we're talking about replacing today. So now on to my timeline. So just for some perspective, only important things I think are here is the first time we got a CAD AVL system was in 2014. We did for a 3-year period for just that system. It was $2.7 million, just for some perspective. So it's a little bit like buying a TV, and that we think we've gotten a little better and a little more less costly, luckily, than we were there. And then 2017 is the first time that we had a demand response system. We've had that same demand response system. It has changed names because it's been bought. It started out as a small company. It's been bought by Ford and things since then for the intervening 9 years. They did not bid on this as part of any team, so we inevitably would be changing demand response systems. And the action before you today under 2026 is seeking approval for up to 1.85 million for both services, for CAD AVL for fixed route and for demand response for our shuttles for a 5-year contract. On the next thing, a little bit of our recent experience. So one of the reasons why we went out is we know our trip completeness, right, which is what the measure is about whether or not we can see those vehicles in real time, whether or not we know the Route 10 is coming, exactly where it is, has been that we've gotten up to 80%, but hover more around 60% in terms of what vehicles are present and you can see. And so we did bring in an outside IT firm called Connex to evaluate a lot of different system of ours. Some of the feedback they gave was about both the hardware trouble we had with our existing CAD AVL provider, GMV, some of which are highlighted there, and then some overall cellular network issues that we had, and recommendations about what we should do if we got a new system and or improved our existing system. So moving on, as a result, right, of the Connex coming, of us knowing our trip completeness was not good, we did an RFI followed by an RFP. You'll see we did an RFI in March of last year, so almost a year ago. We received 12 responses to that. We got a lot of information from that. We talked to many of those firms. We went out to see many of those products in person, in real life. It informed, we basically came up with a statement of qualifications, roughly 100 things, was like, can you do this, yes or no? If the answer is no, we're probably not interested in your overall system. So we got 4 firms that successfully completed that checklist and submitted proposals by the deadline. And then we interviewed 3 of the firms. So why you see like ETA plus spare, it's who's doing the CAD AVL plus who's their subcontractor, which is who's doing demand response. So then what brought us to our conclusion, which you'll see kind of on the next slide, is the committee, which consisted of our 3 transit members here, plus a person that works at Transit regionally with CAD AVL systems really throughout the country, as well as kind of a specialist from Seoul Trans to the south, as we thought the Equans plus Spare team was the best team for us. In that Spare, they can provide what's called a GTF flex feed, which basically means that on one map now you need 2. You need to see where your fixed route vehicle is and where your demand response. So you'll be able to see it in one. We think that they create some efficiencies where we can eliminate some other contractors in our system. And then in terms of trip completeness, they've had a lot of success. You know, we talk our system ranges between 60% and 80% in terms of completeness. We think their information completeness can be closer to 95, which is what we're seeing in neighboring Marin County. And then on the next slide, just a couple other things on why selecting this. We're going to be using a different type of antenna to deal with our limited cellular connectivity. And then one of the things that's always been a problem for us with our existing system is if the driver doesn't sign into the system on the bus, you're kind of dead in the water. But with this, they have a way to basically assign that driver regardless of whether or not they sign in so that their information is available. And so I have members today of both the Equans team, Killian Olivier, and from the Spare team, Ken Gale. And I'll ask, because I'm going to show a little bit of a video that they created, the Equans team, Killian, to come up here with me, and I'll show that video, and then you can ask myself or him any questions you might have. And before she hits play, to give it some context, so put on your little imaginations here, because what we're going to show is we're going to show a scenario in Vancouver. But really what I'm trying to show you is, let's say you got on the fixed route vehicle at the Napa Valley College, right? And you're going up to St. Helena and you've got a meeting with the mayor at City Hall, right? Which is over by the old Napa Valley College campus. So basically you need to take the Route 10 and then you need the shuttle to pick you up. And so this is kind of showing how that would be possible.
Once that's all confirmed, I'm going to go ahead and wait for trip option. I can see the most efficient option here is walk a short distance, take a bus, and connect to an on-demand vehicle streaming. I'll go ahead and select that, and I'll get some more information here. Swipe up and see a detailed timeline, when I need to leave in a few minutes, when I should expect to be picked up on the bus, and then ultimately when I will get to my final destination.
So what it's doing here is it's booking your shuttle trip, right, for you to meet you when you get off the bus.
Then I'll be able to walk a short distance, finally taken along my final leg to meet my on-demand. In this testing environment right now, you're seeing that on-demand vehicle come quite quickly, but you'll see the experience that Red has. They can see vehicle coming towards their pickup, and then ultimately where they will be dropped off, grab.
Thanks for that. And so right now, for example, if you were to do that, you'd go on one application where it would tell you where that bus, in my example, is taking you from the Napa Valley College to St. Helena, and then you'd get in the second app over here and start making that reservation. The systems aren't talking to each other, so you become the brain and say, okay, well, I think if there's a 10-minute wait, this is when I should make the reservation. But in this scenario, basically the systems are talking to another in some way, and they'd kind of make that trip seamlessly. So that's one of the things that we think that teaming this CAT AVL with the demand response brings to us. And then on the next slide, just to recap, basically the action before you today is to contract with Equans plus Spare. And the reason we want to do this is because we don't think that our current system is serving dispatch or the riders well. We did have 2 findings in our Transportation Development Act audit. So that's one of those ones that doesn't look at financials, but looks at performance, and kind of the performance of the CAT AVL system has been that. So we think this will address it. Like I mentioned, it's going to bring them all into the same platform, and Equans really has demonstrated success internationally, nationally, and then locally in Marin, and it's an opportunity for our entire fleet to have one router type. And with that, we'll be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Well, I appreciate the report, and you're right. We've gotten more complaints about, I guess, completeness than anything else. So if this improves that, it seems like a qualitative enhancement that's worth the few extra dollars that it would be anyway. So sounds exciting. Any comments, questions from the board? Then, despite the fact that you had to compete with Hale, that I have to admit, there was a part of me that wanted to say, hold off, let's go watch and all that. So
Let's go see it.
you did a great job despite real competition. And if there's no comments from the board, we'll entertain any comments from the public. And if there isn't anyone in the room and no one online, then I think we're ready to take action. This would be to authorize the executive director or designee to execute the contract with Equans, but Equans/Spare. So with that in mind, I'll entertain a motion to approve that contract.
So
Or,
moved, Manfrey.
thank you. All right. Thank you very much. So Director Manfrey moved, Director Reeves seconded. All those in favor say aye. Any opposed? All right, very good. Now we're on to 12.4 mobility management. And it's not like we're running late, but I'm just throwing it out because no. Director Alessio is the one who is really motivated about a discussion on mobility management, and she can't be here. So the rhetorical question is, should we continue this so that she's there, or should we go ahead and have that discussion and she can watch the video? I'm thoughtful but willing to throw people under the bus. I was thinking about that, but it turns out you pun more as you talk. So, all right. Well, that being the case, let's go ahead, since there's no reaction, let's go ahead and finish the
Yeah.
agenda as is.
It's information only, so I'm happy to meet with Director Alessio
Okay.
and fill her in on what we discussed today and kind of the direction forward.
Okay, well then let's go ahead with that item.
Perfect. So thank you, members of the board. Changing hats here to mobility management for item 12.4. So basically, this, as you mentioned, was a request from Director Alessio, and basically looking for any feedback from you before we start what we think would be a 6-month pilot for this idea. So moving on to the next slide. So what is a mobility manager in the MTC context and its approach for organizing transportation that isn't so much focused on a particular program? So it's not this person, say, here calling us about, hey, I want to do VineGo, or I want to call the county, or I want to call Kaiser about this particular program. The idea that it's more person-centric, so this person would call and say, hey, I need to get from Calistoga to St. Helena, or I need to get to the Kaiser Vallejo from my current location. How do I do that? And then you kind of, based upon the programs that you're aware of, kind of work with that person to get them to their destination. And so this has been a big push from MTC to have each county to have a mobility manager. So on the next slide, what you'll see is what we're thinking of mobility manager in a Napa County context, because we're different than all of the other counties, whether it's for OBAG or for things like this. And so what already exists in Napa County that's just been gotten off the ground is something called Connections of Napa County. And it's a project designed basically for you to call as a person, older adult, 60 or over, or a resident with disabilities, and get information not just about transportation, but about all of these other programs that might exist for you. And so I have Tiffany Walker on the phone virtually there, and she is the heads this program right now in Napa County. And so if you need information, if you call that number, if you go to the website, she is who you reach. And so on the next slide, it shows the information you could get when you would contact Napa Connections, right? Everything from end-of-life care to hospice, to information about health insurance, to transportation. And so we're talking here about just this one little section. We want Napa Connections to deal with all of these other items. They're not something that we know much about. But as you'll see, there's 13 different transportation options kind of listed on the Napa Connection site. That's what the little parentheses 13. As it turns out, right, 9 of them are different programs that NVTA operates, but there's also information about Kaiser Permanente, about Molly's Angels, if you're a partnership health member, et cetera. So we want to know about our 9 programs and then know about those other 4. And essentially, if Tiffany gets a call there at Napa Connections about transportation, this is our idea, which you'll see on the next slide. And so the thought was basically for a 6-month period, any transportation calls that would come to Connections Napa Valley would be directed to one NVTA staff member, in this case, Dexter Cypress, who would be our designated mobility manager. It basically then, we're going to have him track how many calls does he get? How long is this taking for him? What kind of information is he providing callers? What do people say are their gaps in service? I mean, we've done surveys, right? And we think we have an idea, but we could really find out what that is. And then with the information here, we're envisioning coming back to you in maybe a 4-month period, reporting out and trying to figure out, is this something that requires full-time? Is this really just something that's part-time? Is this something that should be housed at NVTA, or could it be housed maybe at the county or at a nonprofit, things like that? So it'll give us an idea of future alternatives. We don't want to jump into this idea that we just need maybe like another larger county as a full-time person that just does this. So we're going to run a little experiment, and happy to hear any feedback you have on how to operate this. So I think that's all I have today.
All right. Well,
Chair.
thank you for that report. Oh,
Is it time for comments?
sure. Yes, go ahead.
So it shouldn't surprise you that, of course, Molly's Angels is very much in favor of this because it creates an easier link for access to get information. So that's great. What are your guys' thoughts or your plans on how do you make this new pilot available to people so that we can really see what the numbers are?
Mm-hmm. So I think we'll really have to promote it, I think, through connections. And yeah, that's a good thought. How exactly we do it, because we don't want to go around this other like larger group. So I think it's in conjunction with them. I mean, in talking with them and meeting with them last week, they're on board with this idea. They get a transportation call. They're on the same county network, so you can basically phone-wise transfer them to, say, Dexter in this scenario. Say, hey, Dexter, I have this person. They're looking to go from here to here. These are their constraints. You can kind of do that warm handoff. And or if they wouldn't be available on that first call, there are different email options I think we're going to make available that's kind of specific to this, that would go to Dexter, myself, and Libby, the other transit staff member. And so we're going to try to basically answer things in real time, and we'll have to work with Connections about how best to promote that.
But Director Smith, you do bring up a good observation, and I think that's just something that the board should be mindful of, where NVTA is offering, since 9 of these transportation programs are things that we currently promote as part of ancillary systems to our transit operations. We are willing to just absorb this for this short kind of pilot period, but I think your point is taken that if we really were to put more effort in this, more marketing, more outreach, it could really absorb a full-time person plus potentially. And so that's why we're doing this sort of like soft launch of a pilot program, understand what sort of response we get and how much staff time that is taking, and then providing that information back to this board, potentially to say, okay, if this is a priority, we will need to dedicate a half-time, person to this, and or here other entities, whether that be Molly's Angels or another nonprofit, this is what it takes to operate as a mobility manager. All at the same time, we will be talking to MTC to try to get funding for this right now, because it's sort of an unfunded recommendation by MTC right now, and so looking at them and their hundreds of millions of dollars of resources and saying, how can you support us in doing this?
Any other comments? I do like the idea of the pilot project just because I think not so much the outreach, because my concern is if you get too much and you haven't really had a chance to kind of get your act together and figure out the ropes and all that, a soft pilot study makes the most sense. Because part of it is more to figure out how can we provide this service. And then phase two is how do we get the word out so that everybody can take advantage of it. So I like the approach that staff is taking. And it's basically there's no additional resources. You're kind of juggling the tasks amongst
Yeah,
everybody.
we're taking it on in-house. So as Rebecca mentioned, we have 3 full-time transit, probably 3.5 full-time transit with really our bilingual outreach coordinator who works under the transit department and does a lot of outreach. And so one of our transit planners is going to be taking on as the mobility manager so that he will be the one-stop shop as far as connections. Napa County or Napa Valley will have his number. He will promote all the transportation options through Connections Napa Valley. Again, it's more about documentation of how many phone calls he's receiving, how many inquiries, whether it be nonprofits or health organizations he's visiting, promoting this. So it's really the documentation component of it. And then we would provide that information back to the board.
Perfect. And hopefully, meanwhile, we'll be using our MTC representatives to ensure that we get funding for the long haul. Okay. Any other comments from the board? If not, any comments from the public, online or in person? All right.
I have a
think
comment
in this-
online.
Oh, sorry.
Hi, I'm online. I'm Tiffany with Connections Napa County, and I just really wanted to thank you guys so much for support and um allowing this to work together as a pilot program. And I think as far as that outreach piece goes, the reason why it will work so well with working in conjunction with Connections is because even once the pilot program is over, the reason why we wanted to make sure that everyone knows that Connections Napa County number is because once it's over, they're not going to know that we had been internally referring people directly to Dexter. They still will know to call, and we won't lose anyone or fall through the cracks. We still work closely with Molly's. We still work closely with NVTA, even if, let's say, after 6 months, the funding doesn't go through. So I think this will be a great way to start tracking those little one-offs. So I'm really hoping that they're able to get some support going forward, because this, I think, will be game changing and show what's actually going on out there. So thank you for doing this.
Thank you. Thank you. All right. There's no formal action, just recognition that you're going to commence this pilot project in 4 to 6 months. You'll report back to say, here's what we've discovered. Perfect. Then that concludes 12.4. Are there any future agenda items? Anybody on the board want to add to the workload? Not that I'm trying to discourage it, but okay then. That being the case, it's 2:54 p.m. and I'm going to adjourn this meeting.